We had over 100 congressmen and senators on Capitol Hill ready to implement the sweep. And then they put me in handcuffs. They bring me here. They put me in leg irons. If they can come for me, if they can come for Donald Trump, be careful. They will come for you. And I guarantee no recession, okay? There's not going to be any inflation.
White House advisor Peter Navarro joins me live now. His new book, I Went to Prison, So You Won't Have to, is out now. A love and lawfare story in Trumpland. Thanks for coming back on the program.
It was a pleasure, Arvin. It was a pleasure.
Let's start with the book. What did you learn in this journey through prison or jail, 3 months, and back to the White House?
So I wrote this, Ari, as a warning about the partisan weaponization of our justice system, the lawfare that we are encountering. And I want to appeal now to you as a legal expert on a nonpartisan basis. I don't know if you know this, but my case is on appeal. It's likely headed for the Supreme Court. And the question is very simple. Does Congress have the right to subpoena senior White House advisors? Mm-hmm. And for 50 years, the Department of Justice said no, based on the principle of executive privilege, which goes back to George Washington. Candor and confidentiality are required for presidential communications. And I had a duty to refuse that subpoena. It had nothing to do with J6, could have been a subpoena for anything. And I had a duty to refuse that. And I wound up going to prison for that. And if I lose my appeal, then every senior White House advisor going forward, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, will face that same kind of dilemma, that Hobson's choice. Do your duty, maybe go to prison, or bend the knee.
And you made that decision. Let me read from an interesting part in the book. You say inmates would regularly check this sort of legal federal database, PACER, to screen new inmates for danger signs that they would cooperate with law enforcement or be what some call, quote, snitches. Such searching is highly sophisticated and organized among the inmate population for safety and security, you learned. And then you recount an inmate telling you, Navarro, quote, you're okay because you're, quote, not a snitch, and you didn't rat out Trump.
Finish it, because...
Go ahead, you finish it.
Because the book, I mean, look, it's legal, but it's tragic, it's funny, it's a love story. You know, my fiance did the time with it. But in that post, I called them postcards from prison, I basically ended it by saying I wasn't sure what the moral equivalence was of these felons basically not ratting out on their thing and me upholding the Constitution. For me, this wasn't about... That's
my question for you.
Yeah,
you
include
that detail of someone who might be involved in something really bad, saying you guys are similar. But
he said we were similar.
He said you were similar. Yeah, no, you write that detail. Yeah, but cooperating with law enforcement about helping them solve crimes is a good thing, yes?
That was the funny part about the whole thing, that there was some kind of moral equivalence to that. I mean, the book itself, it's a bunch of different stories, but one of the things that happened, Ari, which I think will never happen again, is I go in there, could have just cried, in my corner and kept my head down, and I wound up uncovering what essentially was a $5 billion scandal involving the failure to enforce what's called the First Step Act, which was a piece of bipartisan legislation spearheaded by Donald Trump to deal with harsh sentencing and basically move people out of the system, nonviolent first-time offenders out of the system faster. And I discovered in the course of my own trials and travails that people were being kept in 3 to 12 months or more longer than the law required. And so... I'm just going to mention to viewers, you're talking about a Reform Act that basically tried to say people who've done their time nonviolent offenders should have some transition out to society. Yeah, and the reason why you want to do that is you want to punish people. I'm tough as crime as anybody. You want to punish people up to the point where they get the message, but as you go longer than that, recidivism increases. They lose their skills, they get alienated from their family, they learn more in the crime school, otherwise known as prison. So I was able to go in there and learn all about that. I wrote fairly actively op-eds from prison, talked about it. And now on the outside, the two reforms I advocated on the inside, which was to fix the way they forecast the FSA credits so people get those credits and get out on time. And then if there's not halfway house capacity, move them right to home confinement.
And I'm jumping in.
I got that policy already done. I've solved a $5 billion
And you're talking about
problem.
nonviolent offenders.
That's correct.
Then in the book you write, quote, lock up the violent repeat offenders forever. Let go, release nonviolent offenders after appropriate punishment.
Yes.
So by that standard,
Yes.
was it wrong for President Trump to pardon all these violent offenders and let them out early from Jan 6th?
When I was referring to that, I'm talking about very specifically about rapists and murderers and people who are going to be a real danger.
What about people who beat
now, with respect,
police?
With respect to the J6, there was just a lot of people there who don't fit that profile.
What about the people who attacked police?
I'm fine with what Trump did, and I saw. Look, all right. We'll keep this down, temperature down on this. Like the judge, for example, who put me in prison, his name's Amit Mehta, okay? I never thought, Ari, that if I ever got in a situation where I went to trial, that by the time I got to a jury, I would be stripped of every single defense. And Judge Amit
No, I understand what you're referring to, but
hang on, but he did that by bending the Constitution in a way which I think will be repudiated clearly.
All right.
I don't know if you know this. The Department of Justice, of course, under Trump, has already withdrawn their support of the government's case. So,
and that's your case, and we followed that. Yeah. I think we followed it as much as anyone. I want to play, because of this distinction, J.D. Vance saying they shouldn't pardon the people who attack police. Take a listen.
Yes.
If you protested peacefully on January the 6th and you've had Merrick Garland's Department of Justice treat you like a gang member, you should be pardoned. If you committed violence on that day, obviously you shouldn't be pardoned.
And again, you've said the violent people should stay in prison.
Violent repeat offenders, okay? And I'm talking about murderers, rapists.
So is one time okay against the cops? And the reason why I'm asking you, Peter, is I'm going to play one more thing because, again, we have this chance to sit together.
I don't think we should, look,
I want to play one more thing for you.
The J6 thing, I think it's a
part
dead end and a red herring.
Well, it's your book is about
I didn't go to prison because
Well, you went on the subpoena. It was a J6 probe.
It was a misdemeanor for simply refusing
to cooperate with the House J6 probe.
Any kind of subpoena. In fact, I got.
All right. But I want to play your distinction because you, at the time when we talked about this, you also condemned the violent side of that day. Take a look at you.
Yes. Book. The last three people on God's good earth who wanted violence that day on Capitol Hill was Donald Trump, Steve Bannon, and myself, because per the law, well within the lanes of the law, we had a strategy, not a plot, a strategy using the Electoral Count Act to get a legal counting of the actual votes.
Now you're working for a president who, unlike what you said there, released the violent attackers. I'm not going to criticize
the boss on this. Look,
but help us understand that.
Look, the people who were on J6, there was a few who were very violent. Okay, and they
were free now.
Well, they did some time. I don't know the details on everybody who was part. I'll just be honest about that. But I do know that a lot of the people who were put into prison by people like Judge Mehta should never have even been sent there. They could have been given I forget what you call it, but you found guilty and you let them out on their own
recognizance.
Yeah. Look, I think that I met some of these people, and this is not about J6. It's about my fight
but these
about
are,
the Constitution.
I think you would agree. These are fair questions about what you said, because you said no violence, and now you have a president who embraced the violence.
You want me to criticize my president? I'm not going to do that.
Well, I'm talking about the pardon decision. I'm not saying him writ large, but that decision. All right, we have your answer on that. Let me get you, because I have you here today, talk about the book. You're also a big guy on trade.
Yeah.
Here's the court ruling. as you know, the court says
trade, sure.
Yeah, trade. The core congressional power to impose taxes, which is what the courts sometimes call tariffs, is vested exclusively in Congress.
Okay.
Tariffs are a core congressional power. Does this tie your hands? Where do you guys go from here?
So this is very simple, Ari. There's a concern that I suffered. You remember that virtually everyone involved in putting me in prison was a Democrat, okay? It was a Democrat Congress, party line vote. It was a Democrat Justice Department, prosecutors, Merrick Garland, and everybody in between. It was a Democrat-appointed judge.
Mm-hmm. Respectfully, is this the tariff answer?
Yes, because what I'm going to tell you is that the court which issued the opinion,
all right,
if you look at the majority, it was 7, and there were 6 Democrats and 1 H.W. Bush appointee. And they made their decision. But what was very strange about this and encouraging was the dissent. It was a very strong dissent. You rarely see such a strong and thoughtful dissent written, and it was right on point. Then I wrote an article about this shortly afterwards about how it's basically a roadmap for the Supreme Court to uphold the tariffs. So let me just go through the issues. I mean, the first issue is, does the killing of Americans with fentanyl constitute emergency? Does the trade deficit, which is doing all sorts of things to our jobs and factories, but also creating supply chain vulnerabilities that are putting us at great risk, does that qualify as emergency?
I'll let you continue, but let me just jump in. So you're saying that dissent is like a road or a blueprint for how to redeem the trade war. Redeem the, whatever term you want to use, Peter. Redeem the tariffs. But let me finish and I'll let you go. Yeah. So you're saying that could be a roadmap that the Supreme Court could bail out. So let's say okay, if that happens, you guys win. If that doesn't happen and the Supreme Court agrees with this lower court, which is the current law of the land, but it's going to be stayed upon the Supreme Court probably, adjudicating this. If the Supreme Court agrees with this court, is that game over for these tariffs, or what do you guys do then?
Well, we have certainly other means of doing tariffs, but I can tell you, I agree with President Trump here, this would be catastrophic for this country. I mean, what would you see? You'd see it immediately, a spike in bond interest rates, because one of the beautiful things that we've learned about tariffs is they actually raise substantial revenues, and we're turning what looked like to be a fiscal cliff and a deficit that was going to go out of control into something we're going to be able to pay down to the 2 and 3 and 4 billion trillion.
So you feel like this is working for the U.S. even though you didn't get all the deals that you vowed. I mean, we don't have 90 deals.
Well, now, wait a minute. I think we've done beautifully. If you look at what we've got so far, we've got Europe in hand. We've got Japan. We've got Korea, Philippines, Indonesia. We've got the UK.
But you don't have completed deals with all these countries. You have some frameworks.
They are effectively done, Ari. And
you feel like they're done?
Yes. It's just a matter of getting the I's dotted, T's crossed. No, those are done. We have an equilibrium, as it were, in an ongoing negotiation with the Chinese where we have tariffs over 50%, and that's a good thing. India, the Prime Minister of India just wrote a very encouraging note through social media to the president. We seem like that one's settling down. I mean, what's not to like about this, Ari? We're getting trillions of dollars of new investment. There's no inflation on the horizon. How can you criticize, how can anybody criticize our tariff policy now it's working?
Even Wall Street,
it's working,
and some American producers have criticized it. But I understand, and you get your time for that. Before I lose you, because
the Dow went over 46,000.
Yeah, the markets are back. The markets clearly are not currently pricing this in as a problem, but it's a long-term thing. Before I lose you, because of the history and what you've told us, and we appreciate you making time.
Yes,
the president and his allies have sometimes talked about maybe he should have an illegal third term. Then they've said maybe not. We've seen this back and forth. I want to just play so everyone's on the same page. Some of what we've heard.
President Trump will run and win again in 2028.
How do you think he gets another term?
We're working on it.
We have almost 4 years to go, and that's a long time. But despite that, so many people are saying, you've got to run again.
I have never had requests so strong as that.
but it's something that, to the best of my knowledge, you're not allowed to do.
The chief executive is limited in his role with regard to elections, except that where there is a threat to the national sovereignty of the United States, I think maybe the president is thinking that he will exercise some emergency powers to protect the federal elections going forward.
You worked on part of Trump's effort in 2020. That's part of why we have the story.
Come on, Ari.
I just showed you the President of the United States.
Come on. He's playing with you.
Okay, so if he's playing.
He may have a grand plan.
And what you did in 20.
He's the best chess master ever is, but he's also playing with you. Your heads explode when this stuff happens.
Let me ask the question.
Yeah, go ahead.
In 28.
Sure.
Would you rule out joining any effort to pursue an illegal third term for Donald Trump?
Would I rule out?
Yeah, because you were involved in 20.
I don't do this stuff. Look, Ari, the only thing that happened, the only thing that happened in the after the 2020 election is we tried to use a lawful exercise of the Electoral Count Act of 1887.
And we've discussed that on this very program, and you've gotten time.
Lawful.
The question on the table is, would you rule that out in 28?
Come on, you're getting trolled.
If I'm getting trolled, why can't you tell me no?
Tell me the scenario. You said illegal.
Would you join an effort?
I'm not going to support anything illegal.
You're not going to support anything illegal.
I'm not going to support anything illegal.
And a third term is illegal.
I haven't done anything illegal. I went to prison for 4 months and didn't do anything illegal.
And a third term is illegal, so you wouldn't support a third term.
You answered your own question. As the boss says, let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens.
Peter Navarro.
Hey, one thing.
I'm running over on time. I'll give you a final word.
Just one thing. I just want to put this, because I was sitting there listening to Maya. And you want to fact check? Maya saying that Charles Kirk said that black women are inferior. He never said that.
Well,
okay, fact check that for me. Okay?
We've given you time, and I appreciate you coming back. And I meant what I said. We live in this world.
Yes.
You've had quite a journey. You're back in the White House. I appreciate you coming back on the program.
I always are.
All right. White House advisor Peter Navarro.
To you and your new spin-off venture here.
Thank you, sir. And we will be right back.